We got 7 different stories from 7 different media outlets, you guys. It's time for another episode of Regan's Newsround. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with another episode of Regan's Newsround, where I cover 7 different stories from 7 different media outlets. The date and time for this is the 9th of May 2024 at the time of 9:50 a.m. just for reference. And we start here with The Guardian with the headline that the UK officials are under fire for congratulating repressive new chief of Uganda's army. Activists called the move absurd as General Musky Kalabiska, I can't pronounce that name, son of President Muskovsky, is accused of torture and abusing critics. This is quite embarrassing for the UK to be kind of like congratulating Uganda on anything, I think, at the moment, especially when they've been trying to implement laws that are against homosexuality, against those of homosexuality as well. They've not really had a very good eye on the world stage as it is already, and obviously somebody who has been accused of torture and abusing these critics, sort of thing. That's not a very good picture for the UK government to be kind of doing this. They may be saying, they may argue that they're just doing this obviously to have an established relationship. Well, if they could have just said nothing as well. They could have just said nothing, and I don't think it would have, I generally don't think it would have hurt, maybe it hurt at all. Now, obviously, I don't know too much about the torture and abuse accusations against the new chief of Uganda. But if that is the case, obviously, questions have to be raised of if UK officials surely would have known about this. So why were they so keen to kind of just go along with this and congratulating somebody? Let's read a little bit more into this, you guys. So, senior British government officials have congratulated the newly appointed head of the Ugandan army, a man accused of torture, in a move that has been called absurd and disappointing. General Musky Kalabiska, I'm just going to go by the name Musky, Uganda's new chief of defence force and son of the president Yoweri Museveni, received a congratulatory letter from Britain's most senior military officer, Adam Sir Tom Racklin, at the meeting with the British High Commissioner Kate Airy and the British Defence Attaché. Kalabiski and Museveni, who has ruled Uganda since 1986. So they've ruled Uganda. They've ruled Uganda longer than I have lived. And crazy. Have been accused of sponsoring violence and abusing critics. A dossier of evidence detailing allegations of torture and arbitrary arrest were filed to the International Criminal Court in July last year. Both have denied the claims. It's really very absurd, said Kasuiska, an award-winning satirical writer, who said he was tortured in prison and is now in exile because his work humiliated Museveni. With the situation in Uganda and the systematic rights abuses, we need to depend on foreign stakeholders, the British, the US, the EU, to exercise their extrajudicial obligations. I look at this as if the UK is condoning and in agreement with what the General is doing. Amos Kapita, in association with the oppression leader Oba Wine, who runs the children's charity Caring Hearts Uganda, is involved in the ICC's case. And he said, I'm so disappointed that we're talking about allegations involving kidnapping, abduction, torture and killing of innocent Ugandans. My question is, what is the UK congratulating him for? Andrew Moret's spokesperson had said, General Kagalas does not believe in violation of human rights as a principle, so he cannot be involved in any violations of people's rights. Shortly after the meeting between Kalagala and the British envoys, the UK imposed sanctions on 3 Ugandan politicians, including the Speaker of Parliament, over corruption charges. So shortly after the meeting. Okay. Lawyers and researchers welcomed the sanctions as sending a strong message, but questioned why other human rights abuses such as election-related violence and last year's anti-LGBTQ laws, which includes the death penalty for certain same-sex acts as an imprisonment for promoting homosexuality, does not merit the same approach. Yeah, they're silent on some things and silent on another. So it's pretty embarrassing for the UK government, because it's like you can't just like say you're going to be okay for this, but you're going to be okay for this, but you're going to be all right for this and that. They really shouldn't be associating any kind of, in my opinion, based on these on the anti-LBGQ, the election-related violence, and these allegations. I don't think UK should be anywhere near having any kind of these discussions or anything with Uganda right now. I think it's paints a very bad picture for us. You can't focus on one set of human rights abuses and ignore another set, said Omri Nico, a researcher at Human Rights Watch. It would be great if Uganda's partners, anybody who has vested interest in human rights in Uganda, could take a hostage stance. It's about human rights as a whole as opposed to certain factions. Uganda is a key Western ally in Africa and has received billions of pounds of security and development assistance from Britain and the US. It has emerged as a major hub of the gold trade in the region in 2022. The precious metal was the most exported product and is seen as an anchor state in championing economic and political integration across East Africa. It's about the gold. So it's nothing to do with human rights, obviously. A meeting between UK officials and Kagala may damage the global North's reputation as standing up for human rights, according to activists. It is damaging for our human rights. You know, when we're trying to protect those rights here in the UK, yet we're not willing to call out the abuses of human rights in other places in the world. It's hypocritical of us. It is. It's very hypocritical of us to not call it out when it's happening in other places. The UK is legitimising and giving new life to a repressive regime. Human rights will worsen under his leadership of the army, said Andrew Kagame, a Ugandan lawyer. By cozying up to people like him, you worsen your image in countries like Uganda and beyond. A spokesperson for Britain's Military Defence and Foreign Office said it is standard protocol for the Chief of the Defence Staff to write into incoming chiefs of defence to other nations. The UK engages with all levels of Ugandan government and shared on interests, including the Ugandan People Defence Force deployment to the African Union's transition mission in Somalia, to which Uganda is the largest troop contributing country. Yes, but you didn't answer the specifics of what's happening here with regards to the allegations, you know, the anti-LBGQ law, the election-related violence that's taken place in Uganda. This is highly embarrassing for... I consider this extremely embarrassing on an international stage. Obviously, in the UK, not many people will pay too much attention to this story because of other things going on right now. Mainstream media won't highlight this as much. But in terms of from an international global position, it's embarrassing for the current government. And I don't think Labour would make this mistake. But then again, we've already seen Labour making another recent mistake lately as well. So, but hopefully, they will learn from this. Although I am holding my breath on that one, to be fair, guys. So this next one, you guys, is from Sky News. The headline is "The Tories must stop drift to reform," says Robert Jenrick, as he said he would welcome Nigel Farage in the party. The former minister appeals to Rishi Sunak to change course, telling Sky News that getting tougher on immigration is an entirely mainstream view. So allegedly he's saying stop drifting to reform, while also saying that he would welcome Nigel Farage into the party. Now, one of the stories that I've been hearing about is if Nigel Farage was to go into the Conservative Party, he would want a guaranteed seat somewhere as an MP. He would want a safe seat that he knows that he will be able to hold and maintain regardless of what happens. If he was to be given that. One of the other things we also have to remember is that a story came out from, I believe it was from the Telegraph, not too long ago, that he's going to be focusing on the US elections rather than here in the UK as well. So, while as far as I'm aware, I've not heard any confirmation from Nigel Farage and his spokes team on that. It's entirely possible that this is kind of just a lot of waffle talk, but about whether he will actually go into the Conservative Party itself. And obviously, Robert Jenrick saying that the Tories must stop drifting to reform. Well, the thing is that they're kind of not. They're not. The thing is, they're not doing anything to appeal to the British public in any way, shape, or form. They're not appealing to the left. They're not appealing to the right. Not appealing to the centre, because they've whatever they've said they're going to do, they just don't end up doing it. That's the biggest gripe that I have. You know, so I don't understand why he would say that they must stop drifting to reform, while at the same time he would welcome Nigel Farage into the party. It's a bit of a weird headline to say the least. So the Conservatives must stop their voters from drifting to reform in order to win the next election, Robert Jenrick has said. So speaking to Sky's News political editor Beth Ripley, the former immigration minister, pointed to lowering legal migration as the most important issue to win back those who support Nigel Farage's party, as well as those who voted Tory in 2019, who now don't feel that the party is being conservative enough. No. Even if even if by some miracle between now and the next general election, the boats got stopped and migration got under control, it would still not be enough for them. And the main reason is because there's too many issues. There's far too many issues in the whole of the UK that they are not dealing with, that they are not addressing. I'll rinse and repeat, guys. Cost of living crisis, the economy, the NHS, our education system, our crime out of control, the scrapping of HS2, transportation, our uncontrollable energy bills, which is energy bills as well. The sewage that is taking place that's being poured into our rivers and our seas. Just those ones you keep regurgitating over and over again. Like, yes, immigration is an issue, and obviously people want it sorted. But all those other things I've just rattled down matter to people too. So to say that sorting out immigration is going to be the thing that's going to win back voters, may win back some voters, but it's not going to win back all of them, that's for sure. Mr. Jenrick also said he would have no problem with Mr. Farage joining the party or working with him, adding, "I want the Conservative Party to be one which is a natural home for anyone who shares my determination to tackle issues like illegal and legal migration." For the record, there is no such thing as illegal migration. It's just a term that they use to kind of antagonize certain people. There is no such thing as illegal migration. It's just a wording. There is only legal migration. There's no such thing as illegal. The interview came after Mr. Jenrick unveiled his 30-point plan to curb legal migration, including calling to split the Home Office in two so a fresh department could have the sole mission of controlling immigration. Official estimates published in November indicated the net migration figures, the difference between the number of people arriving and leaving Britain, could reach a record 745,000 in 2022. This may make a difference, but I've said this before, guys. The main issue that they have is that they cut the Home Office. They cut the civil servants within the Home Office. The 14 years of austerity is what led to as well, because when you don't have enough civil servants processing claims of asylums, of migrations, you're going to have a backlog, and that's why we have the backlogs that we have. Because they've not only have they not been able to stop the boats or even reduce the boats crossing over, as well as people going through trucks and whatnot, and not setting up a legal route for people to be able to claim asylum. But they're not even dealing enough with the backlog itself in terms of, and they need to hire more civil servants to do that, but they're not willing to do that, which is why that. So even if they split the Home Office in two to have a fresh department, unless they're willing to put their hands in their pockets and invest in more civil servants there to help contribute to dealing with the backlogs, nothing is going to change there. But in the 2019 Tory manifesto, the parties promised to bring the overall numbers down. Mr. Jenrick, the Tory MP for Newark, told Ribby that politicians had betrayed the promise of Brexit by creating a legal migration system that, if anybody is more liberal than one we've had when we were in the European Union, adding, "We have to fix that now to begin to rebuild trust with our voters and also do the right thing for the country." Mr. Sunak resigned as immigration minister in December, citing strong disagreements with the government over the Rwanda policy. At the time, he said he did not think legislation would end the merry-go-round of legal challenge, which had paralysed the scheme. Speaking to Ribby, the ex-minister said last week's drubbing for the Tories in the local election pointed towards a very serious defeat for the government at the general election. "Unless we can change course and win back some of those Conservative voters who are currently not supporting us or are drifting to reform." But Mr. Jenrick ruled out calling for a change in leadership despite his criticism of Mr. Sunak's direction thus far. Instead, he called for a period of introspection, a short one as time is running out, so his party could bring forward some policies that would meet the concerns of the public, adding, "I think the most important one of those is to win back reform voters and 2019 Conservative voters who feel that the party's being who don't feel the party's being conservative enough is legal migration." The Conservative Party are not the same party that they was. If you ask, most Conservatives are not the same as they was 5 years ago, that's for sure. They're not the same party now. Despite opposition from more centrist Conservative MPs over toughening up on immigration rules further, Mr. Jenrick insists his proposals were not right-wing policies. They are right-wing policies. There's no giving around it. But represent an entirely mainstream view that is shared by the vast majority of the British public. Again, this is inaccurate as well. This is completely inaccurate here, saying that it represents the entire mainstream view. When you have control of the vast majority of the mainstream media, as is certain news organisations and outlets that constantly pump out the rhetoric that you want to pump out, it becomes mainstream media because other news organisations are kind of forced to go along with it because that is the topic of discussion. And the vast majority of the British public, yes, they do see that their immigration is a problem, but it is not the main crux of issue that is taking place. The main issue is the cost of living crisis, money in their pocket. There's a lot of people who desperately need help, and they're not getting it as well. And to say that this is not right-wing politics is complete nonsense. It is right-wing policies. This is 100% right-wing policies. So there's no getting around that comment at all, guys. They're actually not even issues that are unique to the Conservative Party, he added. But I do not think that taking on a robust line of immigration in any sense adrift to the right of the political spectrum. And he issued a warning to those who choose to vote reform in the general election, saying ultimately the public will have to make a choice. It is whether or not they want to have a Conservative government led by Rishi Sunak or a Labour government led by Keir Starmer. And the inevitable vote for reform is to vote for Keir Starmer to be our Prime Minister. That is that last part is true. If you vote for reform, because you don't want to vote Labour, you are essentially giving more of a chance for Labour. You're increasing Labour's chances of going into number 10. That is in all seriousness. But people are also fed up of 14 years of the same political party as well and want something different. So that's an important point as well. And so we have to ensure as many reform votes as possible come back to the Conservative Party in the weeks ahead. Well, that's just a nonsense last statement to make there, because it's the opposite that's happening. Nobody, as far as I'm aware, I've not seen any kind of traction whatsoever where people going back from reform to the Conservative Party. There's no belief that the Conservatives are in the values of what are sharing, that have the values that they've once been known, that people have had trust in. They don't see that in any way, shape, or form. It's a dead duck. The party is a dead duck. I've described it as a meteor is kind of hit the Conservative Party really, really hard at the general election. There's a lot of anger about the Conservatives, not just this Prime Minister, this cabinet, this government, but also Boris Johnson. He made promises that weren't kept. And was obviously Partygate as well, that people tend to forget as well. Obviously, the other picture that's getting painted as well is that Brexit didn't work. The Brexit deal that was made as well under Theresa May and Boris Johnson, that deal, people haven't forgotten that as well. And they argue that that it wasn't the deal that the people wanted whatsoever. Well, I certainly didn't want that deal. And they pulled us out of the EU and the Single Market and Customs Union, which, by the way, people did not vote for and was not ticked on the ballot box. And I still get idiots in my comments who obviously do not know their history. Who don't know the bloody history when it came to the actual Leave and Remain campaigns and what was said back then. So stop saying that that's what people voted for, because it's not. Go do your research. So there's also that is another thing as well, amongst many other things which I've already stated. So, but Robert Jenrick can continue to waffle with the back. You know, if you ask most average Joes on the street, like, who Robert Jenrick is, if a non-person who doesn't pay attention to politics, they probably wouldn't even know who he is. So he's not going to be. He may be somebody who may be in the opposition, in the Conservatives again, in the shadow cabinet in the future potentially. But at the moment, right now, he's just kind of just a man just waffling his views about whatever he feels that's needed best. So guys, if you haven't already, please consider hitting the like button and sharing this across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. Just doing those things supports me, but it doesn't just support me, guys. It supports Ollie here. Ollie, what happened to the... Don't turn off. Supports me, supports Ollie, the Orb, and Pingu here. I don't know why. I barely touch it. Maybe if I did that. So any of that kind of stuff, hitting the like button, sharing across social media, subscribing, all that kind of stuff, guys, makes a massive difference. So if any of you guys can do any of those things, it would be greatly appreciated. And thank you to everyone who does do so. So this next one, guys, is from the BBC. An interesting one to say the least here. The headline is: Agency is charging hospitals nearly £2,000 for a specialist nurse shift. An agency providing last-minute freelance nurses to NHS hospitals is routinely charging up to £2,000 a shift, the BBC has discovered. So this is the result of, obviously, when the National Healthcare Service doesn't have enough of its own bodies, enough of its own people, and as we are aware, we know that a lot of privatisation is being used by the by the NHS. The vast majority of things are run by that, and yeah, it's a lot of money that goes into the NHS, literally just goes straight into these private healthcares. We are essentially paying for private healthcare. It's just rather than going out of our pockets at the moment, it's going through. We pay it as tax through to the NHS, and then that money goes into the private healthcare. But what the government would rather do is rather than the NHS exists, they rather take the NHS out and us actually pay out of our own pocket directly, as opposed to a tax towards these private healthcare. So that's the direction they want to go down. But this headline obviously is another example of what happens when we don't have enough of the National Healthcare Service getting enough of the things and equipment and the funds that they need. It's not just a case of just putting more, and I really want to emphasize this, guys. You know, when we talk about not enough funding going into the NHS, it is true that not enough funding is going into the NHS, but it's where that funding goes is what really the issue is. And I don't trust in any way, shape or form Wes Streeting if he's going to be the new Health Secretary for Labour. You know, he talked about obviously wanting more using the private healthcare sector to help clear the backlogs. Now, obviously, helping people get better is obviously a major priority for everyone, and I agree with him. However, I don't agree with the aspect of using private healthcare. And there's obviously, when we've already got so much of the private healthcare embedded, and allegations that he has taken money from private healthcare firms as well as donations. I stress these are allegations. It does make you wonder whether or not Wes Streeting is suited for the person to be in the best interest of our healthcare. I don't think so, personally. So Glenn Burley, Chief Executive of the NHS Trust, said that Thornbury Nursing Service is targeting areas in England where nurses are in short supply. He said it is profiteering from an overstretched NHS, but Thornbury said it offers a valuable, flexible service. The government says new measures will end the use of expensive agencies. Okay, well, how are they going to do that exactly? However, Labour has said that the high costs are a result of Conservatives' failure to train enough nurses over the past 14 years. It's not a case of just... You can train all the doctors, all the nurses that you want within the National Healthcare Service. You can train as many doctors and nurses that you want. But if we're not prepared to pay them a good, decent wage here in the UK, why on earth should they stay here? It's not just a case of the high cost of the training of doctors and nurses. If you're not prepared to pay the ones that we have already in the system, they're not going to stay. Why should they stay when they could be offered a lot of money to go and work in Australia, go work in America, go work in the EU? Why should they stay here if the money's not as good, if the money's better there? Explain. Answers on a postcard. You want to incentivize people to become doctors and nurses. You want to incentivize the best healthcare experts in the world to come and work for the National Healthcare Service, right? You need to incentivize these people. And you're not going to do that with the wages that they're on right now. Under NHS rules, hospital managers are obliged to use staffing agencies that work within a green framework or with a limit or cap or how much they should be paid. And that's another thing I also want to highlight as well, that the training has been cut as well from doctors and nurses. They cut the time and they cut some of the workload as well. So even that's very dangerous as well. I've read reports in the past. But when last-minute essential cover is needed, trusts may use off-framework agencies such as Thornbury. These are not legally obliged to abide by pre-agreed pay scales. Workload pressures in the NHS are desired for more flexibility over shifts that are thought to be driving more nurses to work for such agencies, which tend to pay for people on their books, while also taking a payment for themselves. BBC News has discovered Thornbury charges almost £2,000 for a 12-hour bank holiday shift by a specialist paediatric nurse, an area of expertise which is known staff shortages. On that, BBC News calculates the nurse receives about £1,050, meaning £800 goes to the agency. That's just crazy. So this is This is from source from Thornbury Nursing Services. This is from BBC Research here. NHS is charged 75% more agency nurses are paid by Thornbury. The red is obviously paid to nurses, and the blue is charged to NHS hospitals here. So on bank holiday shifts, 1,015, you can see there the charge to the NHS hospitals is more. And day shift on Friday, £539, 946 for the charge to the NHS hospital. Yeah, it's just a huge amount of money going. For midweek afternoon and evening shift, the agency charges trusts £91.45 per hour, and 85% of what the nurse is paid at £49.50 an hour. Our calculations indicate that for a single Friday shift, the trust is charged almost £1,000, of which £539 goes to the nurse and £400 goes to the agency. Thornbury also pays the nurses their travel expenses and charges the hospital separately for those costs too. So the agency also charges the people to travel to those places as well. Mr. Burley is Chief Executive of the Foundation Group, one of the largest NHS organisations in England. It comprises South Warwickshire Trust, George Eliot Hospital Trust, Warwickshire Acute Hospital Trust and Wye Valley Trust. Speaking to the BBC, he said each of the 4 hospitals in the group is currently spending more than £500,000 a year on staffing provided by Thornbury. He said, although the group has reduced the amount it has spent, sometimes short notice issues force its hand, especially in specialist areas like paediatrics and emergency care. When you've got a critical service to continue, you have no option other than sometimes to go to these very high-cost agencies, he said. Mr. Burnley said Thornbury is active in areas where nurse shortages is and offering such attractive rates at some staff being tempted away from the NHS. I'm sure they would say they are an agency of last resort and they are providing the service, but if that's creating a bigger problem by pulling nurses away from the NHS, then it's certainly profiteering, he said. It is blatant profiteering, point blank. There's no getting around that case at all. So Thornbury is owned by one of the largest companies in the agency sector, an independent clinical service, ICS, which in turn is controlled by Academium, a company based in Jersey. The US, huh? Company accounts show ICS turnover increased by 46% in 2021 to 2022 to nearly £400 million. The company said less than 50% of that is related to Thornbury. In a statement, Thornbury says we offer a valuable and flexible service that helps hospitals guarantee safe staffing levels. Requests are typically at very short notice, often as little as 4 hours before a shift is due to start. The level of rates necessary reflects the last minute and urgent nature of requests. Thornbury, which covers England and Wales, has a sister company, Scottish Nursing Guide, which operates in Scotland and Northern Ireland. Health experts said the continuing growth on spending on freelance health workers reflect the wider factors. Staff shortages in some areas have added to the pressures on rotas, and there is now a challenge for employers to try and persuade more staff to stay in the NHS rather than leaving. Agency spends for health workers in England increased from $3 billion in 2021 to 2022 to $3.5 billion the following year, according to the Nuffield Trust think tank. Vera Stein, the chief executive of Nuffield, says what agencies are able to charge is probably not fair, but is legal. The amounts that some agencies are charging does seem extraordinary. I don't blame NHS, but you have a safety critical service that you need to fill a shift for. What else are you going to do? Danny Mortimer, a chief executive of NHS employers, said there had been mounting concerns that a number of staffing agencies were exploiting the pressures facing the NHS. The BBC raises serious questions about how much public money flows into these last resort agencies and their owners. The NHS makes real strides in retaining NHS staff, reducing reliance on agency staff, he said. The Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said in his recent budget speech he wanted to end costly off-framework agency staffing. The Shadow Health Minister Andrew Gorlin said that the costs were disgraceful and that if in power, Labour would train thousands more nurses each year so hospitals would no longer need to rely on expensive agency staff and taxpayers aren't ripped off. In a statement, the Department of Health and Social Care said NHS staff are prioritising where shifts need filling and we are controlling spending by limiting hourly pay for temporary staff. They said that if an NHS workforce plan sees an unprecedented expansion in training and significant boost in retention, reducing the need to hire agency workers. I don't, in any way, shape or form, believe that the Department of Health and Social Care are doing anything right now to help mitigate, the more reliance on private healthcare within England right now. you know, considering that Rishi Sunak has had many meetings with private healthcare firms in America, and this one, Thornbury, which has its hands quite deep within our healthcare service, which is owned by a company in Jersey in America, speaks massive volumes about just how much privatization is having an impact on our healthcare service here in England, and it's really damning to say the least. Yes, the costs are insane, absolutely, but obviously healthcare and the well-being of the public really does matter. But it needs the plan that obviously that the Conservatives are is kind of just to continue to let things continue going in the direction that they are going. Excuse me. And to allow force more people out of the NHS and more into the private sector, making them pay out of their own pockets to get the healthcare that they need. That's what's happening at the moment, and we know that's happening. And it's very frustrating, guys. Well, one group of people who will not go away is the Waspi women, guys. This one is from iNews. We won't go away, the Waspi women tell the government, stop hiding over compensation. Excuse me. Ministers must end the game playing and commit to payments over state pension aid communication failures, campaigners tell MPs. Sorry, I got something in my throat, apologies. Yeah, once again, like, why are we just kicking this can down the road and just not dealing with these issues? Again, Conservatives are kind of just like holding their hands up, ignoring a situation here, and they're just being denied what they feel is their justification on this. So a lot of people really hate the Conservatives right now, don't they? So women affected by major changes to the state pension age have accused the government of going into hiding over the issue of compensation. Waspi, that's the Women Against State Pension Inequality campaign, has told MPs today that the Working Pension Secretary, Mel Stride, is refusing to meet them to discuss the compensation scheme recommended in a report by a parliamentary ombudsman. During the Working Pensions Select Committee hearing, the Interim Chief of Parliamentary Health and Service Ombudsman, the PHSO, said that the government had still not offered any response to its damning report more than 6 weeks after it was published. So we're talking about 6 weeks after this report has been published. And Mel Stride is kind of just like la 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 la, trying to ignore it, trying to not want to have a conversation about it. Probably because she's been told that she can't give that money. Again, I'm just making things up, but on that point. But it's very frustrating when a report like that, when a recommended report comes down like that, and they're deliberately, and the Working Pension Secretary is kind of like just completely ignoring it. 6 weeks. Says there 6 weeks as well. In a stern rebuke, Rebecca Hilston told the cross-party group of MPs that ministers need to act on the PHSO compensation call. The watchdog recommended up to $2,950 each for the so-called Waspi women who were born in the 1950s and affected by the Department of Work and Pensions' failure to adequately inform them of their state pension age was rising. An estimated 3.6 million women expected to start getting their state pension at 60, but had to wait another 5 or 6 years due to the changes. Campaigners told MPs they feared that the government will delay any commitment to compensation in the run-up to the general election. Angela Maidstone, the chair of the Waspi group, said the DWP have shown that they will hide behind anything not to accept what they've got something wrong. Perhaps now is the time to stop that game playing. Jane Crowley, a fellow Waspi campaigner, said requests for a meeting with Ms. Stride had been ignored, and it does seem to us that they are playing for time and hoping to kick it into the long grass. The PHSO found that the DWP was guilty of I can't say that word, by failing to properly inform women of the state pension age changes. There is a growing frustration that neither the Conservatives nor Labour have committed to compensation of any kind, though the Liberal Democrats and SNP have come out strongly in favour of payments. Why have Labour? So Labour have not committed either on this as well, which is very concerning. Again, Liberal Democrats and SNP have said they're in favour of it, but Labour are kind of like ignoring it as well, like the Tories. Mr. Crowley pointed out that the effective 3.6 million women would form a powerful voting group at the general election if neither the Conservatives nor Labour committed to the payments. And she warned of possible legal action by the Waspi campaign group if the government continues to refuse to set up a compensation scheme. We will not go away, Miss Crowley told MPs. We cannot go away when we've got one Waspi woman dying every 13 minutes without justice. We won't just sit back and passively accept that injustice. We know that we have many supportive MPs in the House of Commons, and indeed when it comes to an election, we have the ballot box, and if necessary, the legal system. Ms. Helen Rad said the DWP's mishandling of changes to the state pension age for women had impacted on many hundreds of thousands and undermined the retirement plans. The PHSO's interim chief said the organisation had been forced to call on Parliament to pick up the mantle of compensation because the DWP had indicated that it would be refusing to accept the findings of that word I can't say again. However, asked by MPs if Parliament could bring in a compensation scheme without government's backing, Ms. Hilden Rad said, no, it's for Parliament to hold the government to account in order for there to be a compensation paid to the individuals. She added, my hope is that given the strength of public feeling, given how much that comes to bear in an election year, given the number of people impacted, given the amount of time it has been lost to those who are at the heart of this, that conversation can be had with the government that enables it to understand the need to act. Ms. Main told the Eye she was disappointed that Mr. Stride was refusing to respond to requests for meetings. They, the DWP, seemed to be frightened of the consequences of admitting failure. She said she feared there was no mechanism for MPs to come up with compensation schemes if the government kept refusing to engage. It's something we will push and push and push until the government feels they must do it. We will keep the pressure on. The DWP cannot just keep ignoring us. The Ombudsman report, after investigating a group of test claimants, recommended compensation between £1,000 and £2,950 for the Waspi women, but Waspi campaigners are still pushing for payments up to £10,000. The campaigners told MPs they would like a two-pronged scheme, one that would give a certain amount to all 1950s-born women, with higher sums to be given to those suffered with the greatest directed financial losses. A DWP spokesperson said Mr. Stride was considering the Ombudsman report and responding in due course. They have added, we have fully cooperated throughout this investigation and provided thousands of pages of evidence for the review. The government has always been committed to supporting all pensioners in a sustainable way that gives them a dignified retirement while also being fair to them and the taxpayer. Okay, I understand the last point on the taxpayer there, but like the fact that Mr. Stride hasn't even bothered to even have a meeting is like, you're not even considering having a meeting. Like, you keep saying we'll respond in due course. Well, how much longer do you need to wait on this when you've had that report for 6 bloody weeks as well? It sounds like to me that they're just like dodging, playing the dodgeball game, guys. Again, like not taking accountability for their own actions, not wanting to have a conversation, at least a conversation with them about this. It's ridiculous. And the Waspi women, understandably frustrated to say the least on this, guys. As is the gang here. The gang here are very frustrated by this. It's very, very unfair for them not to be have their say on this, and all they can do is shout and scream on the outside, really, which is a real shame. It always turns off whenever I turn my head away from the microphone. Very weird, that. Guys, if you haven't already, if you want to support me and the work that I do here, you can do so financially by becoming a YouTube member. Being a YouTube member gets you access to exclusive perks. You can be one for as little as 99p a month, guys. Yes, just 99p a month makes a massive difference for the work that myself, Ollie, and the gang do behind me. Really does make a big difference. Being a 99p YouTube member gets you access to custom emojis that you can use in whenever I do premium videos or live streams, so you're more than welcome to use them, as well as whenever you comment on any of my videos. As a YouTube member, I always respond. Sometimes it takes a couple of days for me to respond, but I do get round to responding to any members' comments on any of my videos as well. And you also do, every now and then, I'll also do community posts for members as well, outside of that as well. $2.99 memberships are those who for those who are $2.99 memberships. They also get early access to content. So any content that I produce and upload, as long as I get past as long as there's no monetization issues, you guys get early access to that before it comes out to the public as well. So that's the benefit of being a $2.99 membership as well. So I want to thank everybody for who have been a YouTube member or are considering it. It would be greatly appreciated. If there are other ways, that you want to financially support me, you can do so by buying me a coffee. A link is in the description there. Another way you could also do so is becoming a Patreon supporter. Joining my Patreon, you don't just join a blank page by joining the Patreon on there. Oh no, you get access to exclusive content on there as well. Not only are you getting free content on there as a free member, if you choose to join as a free member, with exclusive content, 2 videos a week, but you also get access to additional content, being a paid member on there as well. So you get, and I actually get a bigger cut from Patreon as opposed to YouTube. So I do consider becoming a Patreon supporter. Links for all of them in the description down below. So guys, we're going to take a little break from the from all the news here, guys. We got an interesting foil and arms video for you guys. It's one, you know, we've been talking a lot about immigration, but how do you get past? There is one immigration controls that we haven't got past, guys. How do you get past Welsh immigration? Let's find out.
Before granting you entry to Wales, you must first answer these simple questions. Who is Wales's most famous son?
Ryan Reynolds.
Correct. Why are Welsh town names so long?
To attract tourists.
Correct. Why is there a red dragon on the Welsh flag?
Oh, because the dragon looks way cooler than a leek.
Correct. The Prince of Wales is?
English.
Yes. Who is Wales's most famous serial killer?
Anthony Hopkins.
Correct. Why is Jones the most popular Welsh name?
It's not unusual.
Correct. Where will you see a lot of double D's in Wales?
The valleys.
No, the alphabet. What is the most famous body of water in Wales?
Deadpool.
Correct. Traditionally, what do they do in Wales when it rains?
Oh, they close the roof.
Correct. Name the most famous church in Wales.
Charlotte.
Correct. Who represents Wales in Buckingham Palace?
The Corgis.
Correct. Which Welsh TV programme depicts one man's struggle against a town of pyromaniacs?
Fireman Sam.
Correct. And finally, what is the longest town name in all of Europe?
Flynfire the pros fingi cogedig Queen Brodick Santilio Gogogoch.
Oh, very impressive. Daffyd owes me a tenner. Congratulations, lads. You passed the test. Welcome to Wrexham. I mean, Wales. Welcome to... Daffyd, I've done it again.
Wrexham? What? No, this isn't. Well, I thought we were as Wales. Oh, oh dear. So yes. So now you know how to get past Welsh immigration, guys. So be sure to pick up your citizenship at your local border control to join the Welsh Revolution. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. That was a funny one. That was. So the next one I've got for you guys is from the Independent, and this was highly embarrassing for the for George Galloway's Worker Party. So the headline is Monty Panesar quits as George Galloway's Workers Party candidate after just 1 week. So Mr. Panesar, who has contested the Ealing Southall seat in West London, currently held by Labour with a majority of 16,084. So Monty Panesar, famous cricketer, joined the George Galloway's Working Party candidate. And he's had a series of interviews which are highly embarrassing because he honestly didn't even know. He joined this party, but he honestly didn't even know what the policies of what his workers' parties are. He actually got them mixed up from, he got his own policies and beliefs mixed up with what the workers' party's actual beliefs are. He was talking about, he talked about in one interview about how he wanted to get out of NATO and kind of tried to blame NATO for immigrants and migration, which obviously NATO has absolutely nothing to do with. Saying we've got to get out of NATO, and the George Galloway's Workers' Party policy have not stated anything about getting out of NATO or anything of the sorts. So just as one example of how embarrassing he is, so he was, unfortunately. If you're going to join a party, and especially it was good for the Workers' Party to have Monty Panesar in there, but clearly politics is not his strong point. If you're going to be going, and the thing is that if you're going to be going on any kind of interviews, any kind of talks or whatsoever, you need to you need to prepare yourself. You need to be able to, you need to know, especially if you're going to be part of a party, you need to know what his policies are, so that when you are asked these tough questions, you're able to give the straightforward answers. And clearly, he did not know that, and which is probably why he quit in the end and just realised, you know what, maybe politics is not working out for me. It didn't work out for him, to be fair. So the former England cricketer Monty Panesar has stood down as a candidate for George Galloway's Workers' Party of Great Britain after just 1 week. Mr. Panesar was to contest the Ealing Southall seat in West London, currently held by Labour with a majority of 16,084. But after a series of disastrous media interviews, he said he will no longer contest the seat and instead will take some time to mature and find my political feet. In a statement on X, Mr. Panesar said, "I'm a proud Brit who has an honour to represent my country at the highest level of cricket. Now I want to do my bit to help others, but I recognise that I'm at the beginning of my journey and still learning about how politics can help people. So today I'm withdrawing as a general election candidate for the Workers' Party. I realise I need more time to listen, learn and find my political home, one that aligns my personal and political values." It came days after Mr. Panesar appeared to become confused about one of the Workers' Party's policy pledges to leave the NATO military alliance during an interview with Times Radio. Mr. Panesar wrongly suggested NATO's role was related to immigration policy and that British membership was making it more difficult to control the border. Like I said, if you don't know the policies of the party you've joined, you really need to, don't. Like I said, if you're gonna join a party, even as a member, you should know some of the basic policies that they stand for and principles that they stand for. Which is probably one of the reasons why I haven't joined the Green Party. While I know some of many Green Party policies, I haven't joined as a member, but I have considered it in the past. The recent events that I've read and heard about lately on the Green Party is kind of like made me step back and think maybe I shouldn't join the Green Party. So I'm kind of just sitting on the outside, sitting on the fence at the moment, myself at the moment. Mr. Panesar wrongly suggested NATO's role was related to immigration policy and that British membership was making it more difficult to control the border. He said, "I think that the reason that..." sorry, that's just something on my mic there. Saying that the reason our party is saying it is because we don't really have control of our borders. We have an illegal migration, and what ends up happening is some of the illegal migrants go into poor, more deprived areas, and then the resources get strained in those areas. And it affects, the ordinary people, our working people in this country. So it affects the poorest. And I think one of the reasons, our party wants to maybe, have a debate about what is necessity to be in NATO or not. He said, 3 times just in this statement alone. I didn't watch the full interview. I've seen parts of the interview. Highly embarrassing, that one. His withdrawal as a candidate come days after Mr. Galloway said he does not think gay relationships are equal to heterosexual ones. In a clip from the interview with Navarro Meadow, the Rochdale MP had said, "I don't want my children prematurely sexualised at all. I don't want them taught the same things that are normal when their parents don't believe that they are normal." Those are disgusting remarks from George Galloway. It's such nonsense. They are not. I'm not going to go I'm not going to go into that topic, guys. I'm not going to go in that topic. Now, there's a lot of things not normal, but it doesn't mean you have to hate something that isn't normal. But if my children are taught that there's whatever the current Vogue number is, 76 or 97, whatever that number of purpose genders that don't exist, I don't want my children taught that. I want them to be taught that there are gay people in the world and that they must be treated with respect and affection, as I treat my own gay friends and colleagues with respect and affection. But I don't want my children to be taught that these things are equal because I don't believe them to be equal. Why should they not be treated as equal? Why should we treat them any differently to any other human being? Mr. Panesar last week appeared alongside Workers' Party's Britain's leader, Mr. Galloway, in Westminster, arguing for plans including a wealth tax and curb on foreign ownership of sports teams. Mr. Galloway said he had 500 candidates already lined up to fight in the general election and he wanted his party to put pressure on Labour in the same way Nigel Farage was able to target the Conservatives. He also said he was in talk with 3 Labour MPs and 1 peer about defecting to his party. Mr. Galloway said Monty, of course, was a great left-arm spinner, meaning he would be a valuable addition to the party. Mr. Galloway said his party was quite confident in the vast majority of seats in England, except those that we decided not to stand in for political reason, and that will be on the ballot. So people have to choose between Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and they have a genuine choice, and we think our duty is to offer that. Mr. Galloway was sensationally returned to Parliament when he won the Rochdale by-election and replaced the late Labour MP Sir Tony Lloyd, had previously represented seats in Glasgow, East London and Bradford in the Commons for Labour and later the Respect Party. I don't expect George Galloway to hold on to that Rochdale by-election seat at the general election, but we'll have to wait and see, obviously, if he will hold on to it. If he does, it's be incredibly embarrassing for Conservatives or Labour to try to win it back. But we'll wait and see on that. But just on I don't really want to focus too much on those comments that he made at Novara Media. But just on Monty Panesar there, I just think he's got the wrong end of the stick about politics. I really think, like he said there, he needs to go and do a little bit more, dig a little bit more research and digging into politics. I mean, even I, as someone who has been, I've been in the skin for about 10 years now. Even I still don't know everything about politics. I've not been into politics since I was a kid. And there are some topics that I just completely avoid. And there's some that I do dive my head into. And sometimes I don't get it right, which is perfectly natural. We don't always get things right. But obviously, Monty Panesar there, I think he needs to really have a look at some different policies and whatnot. And like I said in this, like, if you're going to join a party, you need to know what the party is, very clear what it stands for, so that whenever you speak on the behalf of that party, you know exactly the points that you're going to be making. Because if you don't, it's just going to make yourself and it's going to make the party you represent look embarrassing as well. So, I think that's a very important caveat to put out there. So, guys, I've got two more stories to go through here for you guys. One from Open Democracy and one from Barline Times. This one from Open Democracy is with regards to our prison crisis, guys. It's still problematic, that is for sure. So, dirty, dangerous, and failing prison crisis revealed in England and Wales. Open Democracy's exclusive data analysis exposed systematic problems described as shameful by ex-prison minister. So we covered variety. We've covered exclusives from The Independent. We've even covered stories from The Guardian with regards to the prison system and the crisis that is taking place with our overcrowding as just as one of many issues that are taking place. One of the other things as well, one of my biggest criticisms about the prison system is not enough rehabilitation is being done on those, and are people being given the support they need when they are come out of prison to be able to find themselves on their feet, as opposed to just ending up sitting in the benefit system or ending up turning themselves back to crime, that they end up back in prison. And I think that's a very important point to make as well. But so let's read what Open Democracy's analysis has to say about there's a spider on my mic. I thought there was something there. Wait. I thought I was seeing something on my mic. It was a spider. Explains. Knew I wasn't going mad. So when Dr. Martha Alethea arrived at HMP, don't worry, I didn't kill it. I just knocked it off me. HMP style to serve a 4.5-year sentence in 2018 was handed to a Hello Kitty t-shirt, a pair of leggings and a rough pair of trousers she would go on to wear every day for the next 18 months. By the time winter came, they were full of holes. The 56-year-old told Open Democracy, "My feet were regularly wet." Livia's experience was not unusual. A charity worker told this website of seeing women in prison wearing flip-flops in the snow, while the official prison inspector reported in November 2023 that many women in HMP Peterborough could not go outside to exercise because they did not have a coat, a jumper or appropriate footwear. The ill-fitting clothing given to inmates is just one of several stark revelations uncovered by Open Democracy's investigation into the state of England and Wales' 117 prisons, which house some 87,000 people. Our analysis of prison surveys data reported by the Inspectorate reveals widespread systematic failings in safety, hygiene, healthcare and violence release planning, that they found more than half the inmates feel unsafe in 35 prisons. Nearly 1 in 10 prisoners are reportedly being physically assaulted by staff members. A quarter of inmates reported threats or intimidation from fellow prisoners, with a further 13% reporting physical attacks. This is only what they've reported, by the way, as well. A quarter of prisoners held in Victorian facilities, where many do not have access to any in-cell sanitation, are forced to use bins as makeshift toilets. They do not have toilets. What the hell? They don't have toilets? Forced to use bins? What on earth? Are you joking? 7% of prisoners said at the time in prisons make them more likely to offend. In 26 prisons, fewer than 80% of prisoners are able to shower every day. That last one really got me. Being forced to use a bin as a makeshift toilet. That's horrible. That really got me there. Former Conservative prison minister Rory Stewart said Open Democracy's findings really helped to make the case for a very important moral reform that goes to the heart of the culture. Stewart added the investigation confirms that prisons are perhaps the most shameful single aspect of society. Labour MP Kate Oldsmar, who chairs the All-Parliament Parliamentary Group for Women in Contact with the Justice System, told Open Democracy these findings are terrible but sadly unsurprising, showing that women's prisoners are routinely being denied their dignity. It is quite clear that the prison system is completely incapable of ensuring serious support to prepare prisoners for release if it is unable to provide such basic as suitable footwear. Freezing feet are not only possible, she was also forced to wear underwear so oversized that she had to tie in knots at her hip. So when she raised the issue with prison staff, she was told, "You're in prison, you get what you're given." Like, this is just, we're talking about very basic things here. The attitude of experiencing prisoners to wear inadequate clothing extends to dirty clothes too. Open Democracy investigation found that more than 20% of prisoners do not have access to clean clothes every week in 65 English and Welsh prisons. Again, like, we're treating these people so bad. It's just insane. Writing in his report at HMP's Eastwood Park, where only 57% of women reported having enough clean clothes every week, HMP Chief Inspector Charlie Tander found prisoners had to borrow a bra from her cellmate because nothing was available. In HMP cell, there was not a good range of prison-issued clothing or underwear for women. Like, what is wrong here? I'm sorry, I've got something on my mic again. It's the same. I think it's the same jumping spider. Sorry, apologies. What is wrong with these prisons? Like, we're talking about, like, why can we not provide some of the basic of clothes to these prisoners? Like, is it really that hard? Are we just going to say this is all just due to cutbacks as well? Like, what am I? I just don't understand how we can treat people like this. It's so inhumane. It drives me bonkers that how we are treating people right now. Prisons are perhaps the most shameful single aspect of society. Lack of clothing is just one of poor hygiene and dignity. In 26 prisons, more than 20% of prisoners are unable to shower every day at HMP Winchester. This figure rose to 93% of inmates. Now, a quarter of England and Wales prisoners, more than 20,000, are now held in now crumbling Victorian facilities, with some without access to any in-cell sanitation facilities. This has become a race issue. Black and minority ethnic men in HMP Colindilly were disproportionately housed in wings without in-cell toilets between July 2022 and August 2023, according to an independent inspection by the Independent Monitoring Board, which produces regular reports on prison conditions. The HMP Inspectorate issued an urgent notification to HMP Bristol in 2023, where men without in-cell toilets must call an officer to be escorted whether they need to use the bathroom. Oh, for crying out loud. Only 16% of prisoners in Bristol said cell bells were answered within 5 minutes, forcing them to use buckets and bins, which they emptied out the window. The waste splashes into the cells below, causing an overpowering smell of urine, the inspector reported. In response, the government committed to install in-cell toilets by 2025. Oh. More than half of inmates in 35 English and Welsh prisons felt unsafe, according to Open Democracy's analysis of surveys conducted by official inspectors. When looking at the number of prisoners, where a third of prisoners said the same, that number rises to 74. These safety fears are often linked to violence. More than a quarter of prisoners have experienced threats of intimidation from fellow prisoners. A further 13% said they had been physically attacked, and 3% said they had been sexually assaulted. Nearly 1 in 10 also reported being physically assaulted by staff. The crisis in England and Wales prisons have been worsened by years of austerity cuts, which funding falling from £4.4 billion, where David Cameron became Prime Minister in 2010, to £3.6 billion in 2015-2016, his last year in office. So again, like the austerity plays a factor into this stuff as well. Despite an increase in funding since then, Spending levels are still lower than 14 years ago, with 4.1 billion spent last year. At the same time, the prison population was ballooned to be the largest in Western Europe. 2/3 of prisons are now overcrowded, meaning cells are now holding a larger number of prisoners that were designed for. The provision of productive sensitivity in clean and decent conditions with access to adequate healthcare and support is simply not possible when the system is being made to cram eye-watering numbers of people well beyond its capability, said Andrew Nielsen, Director of Campaigns at the Howard League for Parental Reform. The systematic failings of British prisons has caused harm intentionally in 2023. A German court refused to request and extradite a man accused of drug dealing to the UK after his lawyer, Carl Jane Jenkinson, successfully argued that his conditions in England and Welsh prisons are so bad it would infringe his human rights. Jenkinson told Open Democracy that he understands that in the UK and in England and Wales in particular, prisoners are threatened with inhumane accommodations, a violation of Article 3 of the European Court of Human Rights. Documents seen by Open Democracy reveal how the Ministry of Justice sent assurances to the German authorities that when overcrowding means prisons fall short of European rules on degrading and inhumane treatment, alleviating factors are found. These factors, our department claimed, include how prisoners are able to spread a considerable amount of each time outside their cells. But our investigation revealed that nearly 3/4 of prisoners share cells designed for one, and said they spent less than 2 hours outside their cells during the week at the HMP Wolston, which is likely where the man would have been held. At the weekend, the numbers spending less than 2 hours outside their cells rose to 91% of prisoners. The data is from autumn 2021, 2 years before the extraction request in 2023. At the same time the extraction request, HMP Wolston still had an overcrowding rate of 160%. It was a nightmare when Lena arrived at HMP Sal, and she described the reception as a deeply disturbing experience. Women were rattling from drugs, screaming, crying in pain, behaving bizarrely. No one could feel safe in such an environment, she told Open Democracy. Lithia had enjoyed a 40-year career researching prison conditions before being convicted of asset financial fraud, which she denies and plans to appeal, describing the trial as a fiasco. She never expected to one day find herself inside, even her decades of research could not prepare her for the harsh realities of life in prison. There were generally 1 or 2 showers between 2 dozen women, Lenia said. The showers were metal cubicles, often filthy and freezing when the weather was cold. On my first night, I shared my cell with another woman, and the toilet had no seat or paper and only a half door, so basically a piece of hardboard with hinges for privacy. Linnea had diabetes, and the prison conditions led her health to deteriorate. Our investigation found that only 12% of prisoners rated healthcare as very good. My insulin pens that I need for living with diabetes were taken from me, she recalled. I flagged it immediately, and I was seen by a nurse who noted my blood pressure and blood glucose was rising. The nurse said that as it was a bank holiday, there was no doctor to give me my medication. On the 4th day without insulation, I collapsed and ended up in hospital, where I was chained to a prison officer. This is at no fault of her own, by the way. This is at no fault of her own. I said to the nurse, if this was happening to a friend, would you say there was no way to see a doctor because it was a bank holiday? Would you do whatever you could? Back inside, her ordeal continues. I needed vitamin supplements to help manage my diabetes, she explained. They would not let me receive them in the prisons. Even when my external consultant said he would deliver the supplements straight from the hospital, they were banned. Today, Lithia has multiple health issues linked to diabetes, none of which she suffered before prison. As well as a poor physical health care, only 30% of people in prison reported mental health care as very good. In 49 male prisons, more than half of prisoners said their mental health had worsened since being inside. There was a woman in Sal who was thoroughly mentally unwell. She would talk to Flower, said Linia. She was heavily pregnant and in denial about it. Anyone could see she had serious problems. Was prison the best place for her? Since leaving prison, Lithia has co-founded the Open Justice Initiative, which aims to bring together people who have been involved in the criminal justice system in some way, including prisoners, ex-prisoners, campaigners, academics, judges, magistrates, probation officers, and others, to ask how we can reimagine justice. There is a feedback loop between politicians and the public to be tough on crime, which is an easy slogan to sell, she said, but it does not solve the problem of the causes of crime. And what we have is people who keep on returning to prison, and the cycle continues. Our investigation found that 7% of prisoners said their time in prison made them more likely to offend, while a third said prison would make no difference to them in reoffending. Government figures showed the overall reoffending rate for people who have been in prison is 25.8%, rising to 56.1% for adults who serve conditional sentences of less than 12 months. This reoffending is not only hugely negative impacts on the mental and physical health of the individuals and their family, but it also costs the taxpayer £18 billion. So even though it may not directly affect you or your family or friends, it's costing you out of your own pocket as taxpayer money. That taxpayer money that could make a difference to, for example, the cost of living crisis. Governments neglect their prisons and prisoners at their own peril, the UN Special Reporter on Torture, Alistair Jay, told Open Democracy. This short-term approach leads to repeated reoffending. It does not keep communities safe and results in inhumane and degrading conditions. These worrying trends in England and Wales must be reversed. 80% of all crimes are committed by people who have been in jail have been through the criminal justice system before, said Chris Atkins, who was held in HMP Walsworth after being sentenced to 5 years for tax fraud in 2016. And has since written time after time an investigation into reaffirming the criminal justice system. That shows you what the core problem is, he added. It's not just new people coming to the system. It's the same people stuck in it. We're not letting people out. This was echoed by Sonia Rupel, the CEO of Women's in Prison, a charity that supports women affected by the criminal justice system. She believes reform is needed to prevent people from being imprisoned. Rather than locking up women and removing access to very basic things that can retain dignity, like clothing and hygiene products, we need to invest in community-based service like domestic abuse, welfare, mental health and housing to address the root causes that draw women into the criminal justice system, Rupel had said. A HM Prison Service spokesperson said, all prisons have arrangements in place to ensure offenders can stay clean and decent after the improving conditions by building new modest prisons at the fastest rate since the Victorian era. We have also improved safety and invested £100 million into tough security measures to clamp down on the contraband that fuels violence behind bars. Just the last bit. Open Democracy analysed survey result carried out by HMP Inspectorate across 93 adult prisons from autumn 2021 onwards, looking at responses to 47 questions from a range of categories. We exclude any prisons that had not been inspected since before 2021, as the survey questions were different. So this is an important caveat to add to that there. But a very important piece here by Open Democracy, opening up a lot more things about what's happening in our prisons than we initially thoughted. I mean, just the initial fact that people who require certain medicines and whatever to live or and whatnot, and just being denied that simply because they are in prison, is horrific. And we're talking about basic necessity clothes here. Women not even being able to have underwear. Like it's just ridiculous. Like, we're talking about basic clothes, not having a basic cell, not being able to do their business in private. It's just like discussing dirty showers as well as in this report. And it's just like, what's going on here? Like, what is going on here? This is not how to run a prison in any way, shape, or form. Now, it's easy for us to point fingers and say, well, the staff and the people who work at the prisons need to do more. It's all well and good saying that, but is it just a case of just more needs to be done there, or is it just a case of more funding needs to be going? There's a lot of questions and not enough answers. And these charities and organisations need to have more of a say about what needs to be done to help stop, as has been put in here, the reoffending of people. Yeah, I said right at the start before we even talked about this, how important it is that those who are rehabilitated and how they come out. Rehabilitation is so important so that when they come out of the prison that they don't need to come back in. But if they are in such a horrible, undignified environment, that makes them worse off physically and mentally, it could cause them to do even more crimes and whatnot. And this is what they have stated here. It's incredibly worrying, very concerning to say the least. And my heart goes out to anyone who's going through that, regardless of whether or not that they are, whatever their crime is. You know, they are still human beings with emotions and feelings. And I use this same category when it comes to immigration, immigrants coming over, guys. Yes, they have broken the law and they must face the justice for it, absolutely. But we also have to remember that that we have a duty and responsibility as a human rights to look after these people as well. So that's an important factor in here. I mean, the fact that there was a report in there that stated that some of them have to use bins to go to the toilet. Bins. I mean, we're talking like this is the United Kingdom, for crying out loud. We're not talking about some third world country all the way in Africa. You know, with all due respect to Africa, where a lot of this is a lot of countries are a lot worse off than us, and this is how we're treating our own people, because some of them are British citizens. This is how we are treating them right now, our fellow British citizens in our prison systems. And I think that's a very important point to make. It's very undignifying in any way, shape or form to treat people like that. And I talk so much about how important the compassion. It's very important to show the compassion and help people. You know, when people do wrong, we want to help them change their ways and change their ways so they end up doing what's right in the end. You're not going to do that by kicking people down when they are down. When people are down, kicking them doesn't help. So I just feel like, after reading that, it feels like just a lot of the world just does not have the humility that I feel about people. It really does hurt me. Really, really does. How do you guys feel about this? Yeah, Ollie hates it. Pingu's disgusted by it. The gang feel exactly how I feel about it. They absolutely hate it to bits, and I don't blame them for feeling the same way. And I hope many of you guys watching this feel the same way as I do about that story, because it was very uncomfortable talking about it now. So we got one more story to cover here, guys. We've gone well over an hour. I was not expecting this to go over an hour, but there we go. This one, guys, is from Byline Times. It is one that we talked about on the Snowflake Watch live stream, but we're going to be talking about it again because I wanted to read this piece here from Byline Times on it. So Labour MPs are furious with Starmer over the defection for the high-right Conservative MP Natalie Elphicke. I cannot say her name. Natalie. One Labour MP described the decision to take Natalie as a disgrace, and that would come back to bite us. Excuse me. And I just look at this, and I just thinking to me, like, Labour have while one thing Keir Starmer is right about is that Labour have changed, but have Labour changed in the benefit of the British public? Part of me feels like it hasn't. I don't like this path that Labour are taking, and I'm very conscious of the path that they're taking. I also want to add a correction that I made on the Snowflake Watch live stream. I said that Phil from Different Bias didn't give his opinion on it, which is wrong. Someone had told me that he did give his opinion on it, and he did give his opinion on it. I went back and watched that video, in which when he did a video on it on Phil with Different Bias on his YouTube channel, and he did state that he did not approve, that he would not, if he had one of the key makers of decisions, he would not have approved Natalie into the Labour Party. So he did state that in his video. So I just want to put that out there. But this will anger a lot of Labour people on the left. This will upset a lot of people. A lot of members, and I think it will turn some members away from the Labour Party, because a lot of people will be looking at them thinking, you know, they are becoming more red Tory based off this. Now, as of this time, I've still not heard that she's officially going to be stepping down at the general election, like someone else is going to be taking her place. I still haven't heard that, so she's still going to be there, considering her track record, I just feel like she's everything that we don't want in power. So I really don't like this at all, guys. Keir Starmer's decision to welcome the defection of the hard-right Conservative MP Natalie Elphicke to the Labour's party has caused fury and disbelief among Labour MPs. One Labour MP told Byline Times that the whole parliamentary Labour Party is furious about the decision to embrace Elphicke, who has a long record of inflammatory comments on immigration and asylum seekers. Elphicke, who is the MP for Dover, had previously accused the Labour Party of wanting to open the borders and called for asylum seekers to be forcibly turned back in the English Channel. She also suggested that those who arrive here use razor blades to cut their fingers to avoid being identified. Yeah, these are comments that she has made in the past. She was also suspended from the House of Commons in 2021 after being found to have tried to influence a judge who was presiding over the case of her then husband, Charlie Elphicke, who was later found guilty of sexually assaulting 2 women. Elphicke defended her husband at the time, saying that he's being attracted to women made him an easy target for dirty politicians and false allegations. No, that's just him not being able to control himself. That's the reality of it. One Labour MP told Byline Times that MPs from across all wings of the party, up to and including the shadow cabinet ministers, made their displeasure about the move known to the Labour leaders' team. Responding to the defections, the Labour MP described it as a disgrace. I think it is a disgrace, and I know a lot of colleagues are extremely unhappy, the MP said. There's been a broad church, and there's admitting to hard right Tory MPs who demonise refugees and dismiss sexual assault survivors. We already know that many voters don't understand what the Labour Party stands for. How does allowing someone who doesn't remotely share our policies or become our MP help? Or is this Natalie's version of the ones that Keir wants to present to voters? As the saying goes, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything, and that is what is already putting voters off and worrying them about a future Labour government. It's yet another move that will come back to bite us. Elphicke's defection is also stunned the Conservative Party, with one leading right-wing anti-immigration Conservative MP was heard commenting that Elphicke was considered hardcore on the issue even to them. Asked about her defection, a spokesperson for Rishi Sunak said, "I think it's down to Labour to explain some of her past comments and why they believe she's now the right person to join their party." Elphicke's plans to stand down at the next general election. Okay, so she will be standing down at the next general election, but has discussed taking on a new role advising the Labour Party on housing, a Labour spokesperson had said. Okay, so she's not going to be an MP anymore. That's the only good... So she is not going to be an MP. It has been confirmed. If Byline Times are saying it has to be true. A spokesperson for the Labour leader told this paper that they were confident that Elphicke shares Labour's values despite voting for restrictions on trade union strikes and against action on climate change. Asked whether Labour would also welcome Nigel Farage in the party, they replied that we have had conversations with all sorts of people who want to come and support the party. So they would not rule out welcoming Nigel Farage to the party there. What is wrong with these people? I get, like, one of the arguments I was seeing was that, like, yes, it was a great moment to the defection right before PMQs and all that, throwing Sunak off course. Yes, that's great headlines and all that kind of stuff. Yes, but do you want someone like that within your political party is the question. And the vast majority of people in Labour are saying no, they don't want someone like that within their party. And there's broad church, as it said, and then there's extreme, and she is extreme. There are moderate Conservatives who would be much more suitable to join Labour, but this is quite shocking. I really don't understand. They've obviously offered her something as well, but I hate this decision by Labour. I really, really do, guys, and I generally hope that. I'd like to think that Keir Starmer knows what he's doing, but at the same time, I don't think he knows what he's doing at the same time as well. But like I've said, guys, I will still take this Labour. I will still take a Labour majority than a Conservative majority. I personally want a hung Parliament so Labour can be kind of held to the fire by Lib Dems, Greens, as well. But we know that's polling. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see what polling says as time passes on, what people generally think. But it's so frustrating, guys. I just think this decision by Keir Starmer and the Labour Party to have this defection, the great headline grabbing, but why? It just does not make sense to me. But maybe more over time, we'll get more answers as days and weeks pass, a bit more understanding of why they're doing this. But so, guys, we have reached the end of Regan's news round. Can I turn my head without the mic turning off? Ollie would like to say a massive thank you to everyone who has come along to the actual premiere video. What did you guys make of some of the subjects and discussion? You as well. Yes, I know. Pingu, I know the light's turned off, but it's still on. Can you turn back on, please? Turn back on, please. This microphone drives me insane sometimes, guys. It really, really does. I apologize. I apologize for the microphone. It's just so I don't have to actually have it right in front of me, but I think this one's becoming more problematic than the old one, so I do apologise. But what did you guys make of some of the stories that we talked about today? We covered several different stories today. Obviously, talking about the UK officials supporting Uganda's new chief, Tory Robert Jenrick, and he's saying that the Tories must stop drifting to reform, even though he would welcome Nigel Farage. Agencies charging £2,000 for specialist nursing. We also talked about the Waspi women who are still pursuing compensation from the government. Monty Panesar quitting the George Galloway Workers Party. Obviously, the last story, which was one of the story from Open Democracy about the conditions of prisons in England and Wales, which is absolutely horrific. And of course, the defection of Natalie to the Labour Party. What do you guys make of all these stories and more? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, what you guys think of all of them. But just before you go, guys, I just need you guys, if you can, do one more thing for me. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and support the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or you can also join me on Rumble, Patreon, or the new Facebook page for exclusive content there as well. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.